Good morning, everyone. It's Una Carmody here. I'm the Director of Arts Audiences, and you're very welcome to our very first webinar. I'm here with Owen McCarthy. Owen is from the All Ireland Research Observatory, from whom the tool we're going to talk about this morning was commissioned. We sent through some instructions to everyone. Owen had created a very short instructional video about the basics of the tool. So we're hoping that all of you, or at least most of you, will have watched that. And so we won't have to spend too much time on the basics. And some of you, of course, may also have been at the session we ran at our Focus on Audiences conference in December and have been using the tool ever since. I know some of you are enthusiastic users. The first thing I'd say to you is this is our very first webinar, so we'll be really interested to see how it goes. We're sending out a feedback survey once this is over, and we'd be really grateful if as many of you as can take, like, it's 1 minute to tell us what you think, because that will inform what we might do in the future. And secondly, of course, we would ask you to bear with us if there are technical issues or if something isn't 100% clear. This is, as I say, our first time doing it. Now, we hope we've sorted most things out. I'm not expecting any problems, but just in case there are. There are a number of ways that you can interact with us. You will see that there is a pad on the right-hand side of your screen. So when the time comes, you can ask questions by typing. You can also ask a question on Twitter if you're watching on YouTube or you're not on Google Hangout. And on Twitter, it's @ArtsAudiences and the hashtag #MapMyAudience. Okay. I wanted to mention too, I don't know if any of you are here because you're interested in applying for touring funding, but we are also running 2 pre-application workshops for the next round of touring. That's next week. So in Galway on Wednesday and in Dublin on Thursday. And if you go to artsaudiences.ie, you can see all of the details there. So do feel free to sign up. So how this is going to work is we're saying an hour. We really don't have much clue how long it's going to take. We may finish before then. Owen McCarthy is going to present on the tool first, and that presentation will take about 20 or 25 minutes. And then we will take your questions. Now, if you want to submit questions at any point, feel free to do that. But Owen is going to go through his presentation and then we'll take the questions in order. The idea of today really is not so much that people might get specific answers to specific data questions they have, but more, I guess, that you would get a good sense of how to actually use the tool, how to navigate around it, how to make the most of it. So we will be, if there is question selection to be done, we'll try and pick questions that have, that illustrate something about the tool and that also, lots of people would want to know and would be interested in. But obviously feel free to ask whatever question comes into your mind, and Owen will use those questions to illustrate how the tool is used. And Owen is here. He's going to be joined by Monica Corcoran from the Strategic Development Department of the Arts Council, who obviously commissioned the tool in the first place. And we, as I say, will all be really interested to hear or to see how this goes, and we hope you enjoy it and find it useful. I can see that the number of people logging on is growing every couple of minutes. There are about 80 people who have said, all around Ireland, who have said that they will join us today. So from our point of view, that's a terrific result, and we hope it works well. I'm going to hand you over now to Owen.
Thank you very much, Una. And yeah, you're all very welcome. And thanks for logging into this first Arts Council Arts Audience webinar. So I suppose in terms of questions, there's just another slide that I want to cover that we have for asking questions. We can ask through Twitter on the Map My Audience hashtag. So as Una said, I'm going to start off with a few slides, and really what I want to cover the basics of developing an evidence base for your arts venue, and I want to cover some of the evidence-based tools. Some of you may have seen some of this before. It's really a recap to go through the tools and give people a feel for how they work and some of their features. But yeah, the real aim of today is to focus on questions and examples and really get some working examples so people can extract the real benefits from the tools. So I'm just going to move on and just talk briefly about the importance of an evidence base for your arts venue. Providing robust evidence has become fundamental in how we make decisions and support arguments across all different sectors. Informed decision-making, it saves time and resources, and it helps us really maximize our investment in the various areas. Resources are limited now, so the more we know, it really allows us to allocate those resources more efficiently. And as I'm sure venue managers and people working on funding applications really know these days, that robust evidence it's now a prerequisite. So for our campaigns, for long-term planning strategies and so on. So an important evidence base also helps us. It helps us and others understand why decisions are made. So this can help garner support, or it can help break down opposition when people can understand what's behind a decision, and it's really transparent. So as I mentioned before, we're just going to focus on the three primary evidence tools that are available to venue managers or people needing information on in the arts. I suppose the top at the broader level, we have the TGI reports. So these are developed by the arts audiences. So these are survey-based reports that give us a very broad idea of our attendees, what kind of people are there, what people are viewing, and then we can break down a bit lower to the tool that we developed for the Arts Council, so we can look at our venues and learn in a lot more detail what's going on in our specific catchments. So we can get ideas about our attendees from the TGI reports, but then we can apply those ideas specifically to our own catchments. And then if we want to drill down a bit deeper, we can move on to the Aero public WebGIS maps. So these are really, they tell you what's on the ground within your catchment. So combined, you get a really macro to micro level of analysis for your area. So individually, they're all wonderful resources, but when you combine them, you can really enrich the level of information that's available to you, and you can really build a story for what you're trying to achieve. So first of all, I'm just going to touch on TGI, and some of you may be very familiar with this, some of you may not. TGI stands for a Target Group Index, so it's a comprehensive consumer behavior database. So this is a survey-based database, so it's sample-based of 3,000 people, which is to represent the Irish adult population, which is roughly 3.6 million. This is updated annually, and it really, for what's available, it provides a clear snapshot of consumer behavior and media exposure in Ireland. So this is a very broad database. It's focused on much more than arts and arts audiences, but what's taken from this database, it forms the report Arts Attendance in Ireland. So this report, if you want to access relevant TGI data, you visit the artsaudience.ie website, and you can download this report, and there's a lot of relevant data there, which can give you a start for what arts attendees are doing and what they're looking at. Very briefly, I'm just going to talk about what kind of data is available from TGI. So we can get information on the gender split of attendees, the art forms that are visited by attendees, the frequency of attendance, the age profiles, whether arts attenders are using the internet. We can learn a bit about their social class, social background, and their employment status. Next, I suppose this is why we're here really today, to talk about the the arts venue drive time catchment tool. So what we were set out to develop here, we wanted to make a simple interface to allow users and venues to assess potential audience profiles within specific drive time catchments. So we wanted venues to be able to learn about the people that are living around those venues. So this is built using Census 2011 data, which is it's the most recent census data we have. And we extracted it based on drive time catchments. So we'd make a catchment, say 0 to 10 minutes. So we could select the entire area surrounding a venue that it would take 10 minutes to drive to. So it's quite a relevant. We can understand it. It's quite an easy way to measure distance as a catchment like that. So we use this. The catchments they were developed using drive time analysis. So it was done as you might put into your sat nav your venue and your house, and this will generate the time. So we could build up a catchment. So I'll show you an image of a catchment in a moment. So it'll give you a visual idea of what the catchments, the kind of areas they cover and whatnot. The data we extracted based on the catchments, we developed about 40,000 rows of demographic data. We needed to make these accessible and usable so people could go on and select their venue and select what data is relevant to them. So we built it into this dynamic dashboard that hopefully a lot of you have seen on the Arts Council website. And it's quite a clear and simple tool to use. So I'm just going to run through briefly the contents of what we have in there. We selected 73 of the 74 available funded venues from 2014. The 74th venue was an island, so we couldn't obviously calculate a drive time catchment for that. But we have a lot of demographic indicators in there. We have our population by gender, we have our education of people living within the catchments, the ethnic group, the level of internet access available in the catchments, the nationality of the population. We can look at population with the disability, the principal economic status. So are they employed? Are they at work? Are they retired? And then we can look at the socio-economic group classification. So we've a lot of baseline data in there that we selected with the Arts Council that we think they are relevant to venue managers and so on. We can look at the data differently by selecting different methods of viewing the data. So we can look first as the data in an aggregated catchment. So we can look from our venue, how many people are living from 0 to 10 minutes, or how many people are living from 0 to 30 minutes, or 0 to 40 minutes. So we're getting figures for an entire catchment here. But sometimes we might be interested in what's our local population. So how many people are living between 0 and 10 minutes, and then we might want to know how are the people living from 10 minutes to 30 minutes? Is that different? So we can look at the catchments in isolation. So it's a different way of viewing it. But again, we can compare the catchments that way. It's another option. It's another way of extracting more data and better information about our catchments. Also, we view the data as a percentage, and this is particularly useful if we want to compare again. If we want to build up a picture with another venue or another area, we've built in the state figures, so you can select your catchment and the demographic data you want to look at, and you can baseline that to the national figures. So it's a very, very, very straightforward way of developing an argument saying this catchment has X% higher than the state average. So it's a very useful way of doing that. This is an example of what a catchment would look like. This is looking at a venue in Longford. So this is a catchment of there's 4 catchments here. So you can see the venue in the very center, and you've got the very dark area here. So this is 0 to 15 minutes drive from the center point. Beyond that, you see the lighter gray. So you've got your 0 to 30 minutes catchment. So you can see it's quite a big area. And then 0 to 60 minutes. So this is an hour's drive. So if you notice, you can see the road underneath. You can see the catchment extends, and it's bigger where the road network is better. This is particularly noticeable if you look at 0 to 90 minutes. So this is an hour and a half drive away. You can see at the national primary roads, the catchment will follow all the way out here. So for Longford is a massive catchment because it's based in the middle of the country, and it's got it's surrounded by a very high quality road network. So that's really just when we talk about catchments today, that's to give you an idea of what the catchment looks like. I'll briefly run through some of the functions in the tool. Across the top, we've got our filter and data selection. So this is where we select our venue and our data and how we want to view it. What we select then comes up in this banner across the top, so we can check that we're sure we're looking at the right data. So it tells us our theatre and what indicator we've selected and what type we're looking at. We have our legend. This differentiates the different catchment times. So the dark grey will be 0 to 10 minutes, and the red would be 60 to 120 minutes. So we know what we're looking at quite easily. Our dynamic dashboard viewer, this updates when we select our features. And then we have, excuse me a minute. Excuse me. We have our different categories. So if we're looking at population, we'll get our population by age categories. We also have our national comparison figures. So when we're looking at percentages, we can compare here. In a bit more detail, this is the filters across the top. We have our arts venue, we have our indicator, and then we have our account selection. So I'll just move down. We have a few other features at the bottom here. We have, when we select our features using the filters, we can reset the view, so it'll reset the page and bring it back to how it was when it initially loaded. Then we can look at, we can share the tool. So you can just click on a link here. If you've selected your venue and a population, a particular demographic, you can just hit share and you'll be able to share what you've selected with a colleague or a friend. So you can go look at the figures here for this catchment and they'll get exactly what you're looking at. And then importantly, you've got your download features. This allows you to download a screen grab or an image of your selection, or you can download the image as a CSV, so you can bring the raw data and look at that. Excuse me. Excuse me. So that's a very important feature, the download feature, because once you get the raw data onto your own computer, you can make graphs, you can do whatever you like with it. I'll just actually jump onto the tool now, so we can have a quick look at what the tool looks like. So here we are in the Arts Council page. This is the live tool. So you can see it now. This is the live tool. So we've got our filters across the top where you can select your theatre, and it updates. And then you can select your indicator. So as you can see, it's all interactive. When you hover over something, you get a little pop out. So it'll tell you what you're looking at, what venue you have. You've got your national figures here. And then you've got your download features and whatnot down below. So this is just really, we're going to be spending a lot of time today on this tool, but just to give an idea of what it looks like in the flesh. So I'm just going to jump back and I'm going to talk for a moment about the mapping and the online mapping available. So to really drill down, if you're looking at a catchment, you might have a 30-minute catchment. As you can see, that's quite a large area. If you want to know more in detail of what's on the ground within a catchment, you can look at your Aero online free GIS mapping. So this is a way of looking at data presented spatially. So we can look at distributions and details throughout local areas and regions in a lot more detail. So if we think of Ireland, we have it broken up into counties. These are different spatial scales. So Ireland is broken into 26 counties, and then we can go down again and we have 34 local authorities. But with this mapping data, Ireland is broken up into a lot more detail. So instead of looking at the county figure, say we have the county population for Wexford, we can break this into smaller administrative areas. So with the GIS mapping, we can have Ireland that's broken into 18,500 administrative boundaries. So these are relatively these are small housing estates with a mean population of about 150 people. So when we map all of these boundaries beside each other, we can tell which ones have higher populations of a certain amount, if we're looking at older population or lower population. So we can it really allows us to pinpoint detailed and general trends very easily. So I think this is better looked at in practice, but it's a very important feature and a very, very powerful way of looking at data. The tools are running on the Aero website, so we have a lot more information here. It's on aero.ie, but you can look at the entire 2006 and 2011 census at a very detailed level, at electoral division or small area level. So small area is where the the country's been broken up into 18,500 boundaries. So it's a very, very powerful way. We have 15 census teams, and there's over 700 individual indicators there. So you can look beyond, if you're interested in Gaeltachts or car ownership, you can look at demographics in a lot more detail here. These are all free, they're very easy to access, and there's no real GIS skills required to look at these. So you can also print and export the maps like you can from the Arts Council tool. So it's really like using a Google map. So I'm just going to jump on to one of the tools now, and we'll have a quick look now. So this is, I've just gone onto the Aero website here. It's aero.ie, and I'm going to go and look at our mapping resources. So Aero census maps, we've got a wide variety of maps. So maps at national level, I'm just going to look at our census mapping viewer, and we'll get an idea of what the mapping looks like and how you can access it. So it's very, very easy. You've got, like on the Arts Council tool, you have a list of indicators which you want to look at. So I'm going to select population, and you have smaller indicators here. So for example, I'm going to look at population age 65 plus. So you can see down the left, the light yellow areas have very low percentage population. The dark areas have a very high population, so up to 78%. So you can, it's just a matter of dragging around with the mouse. So I'm just going to very briefly look at Dublin, and you'll see very quickly you can get an idea of where the older and younger populations are residing. So I suppose put this in the context of your venue catchment, you'll be able to identify your populations very easily. And you can zoom in very close. You can see the size of these boundaries. When I talk about the size of a county boundary to the size of a small area boundary, these are very small areas. So you can turn it off so you can see where exactly you're looking. So when you're at Merrion Square, you can click on it, and it will tell us that 31% of the population here are over 65. So I'll be using these tools quite a bit throughout this session, but I just wanted to give you a quick look and give you an idea of how we go here. So I'm really going to try and move on and press on with some questions. I'm just going to jump back. And we've had a few questions in advance of this session, so I suppose really to get started, I'm going to look at some of those. We had a number of questions from Oren Little in the Theatre Royal in Waterford, and these are some very broad questions. I think they're questions that a lot of venues might have about their own catchment. So for a start, I'm going to use the tools to go through and try and answer as many of these questions as we can. So I'll just run through them very quickly. The first one is who lives within half an hour, 45 minutes, and then an hour away from our venues, because this will indicate our locals, our county customers, and our regional customers, and this is vital for funding applications. The next interest that was had at the Theatre Royal is families and under 12s in the household. Where are they? How do we identify them? Again, I suppose this is the other end of the scale. The demographics of over 55s within an hour. So are there many? How do we identify those? Then to look at the socioeconomics of the city and county, as they differ throughout the county very much. And finally, to look at the non-nationals of the city and county. So that's quite a profile to build up. So I'm going to leave the presentation now, and I'm going to go into the mapping and Arts Council analysis tool, and I'm going to use these tools to try and answer as many of these questions. So as I work through these questions, you might have some yourself, so you can submit them via the Google Hangouts or via the Twitter, and we can hopefully answer everyone's questions today. So I'll just move on to our web tools, and I'll start with the first question. So who lives within an hour or half an hour, 45 minutes, and then over 1 hour away? So first of all, I want to find the Theatre Royal. So I can type in here, and we'll get it there. And this is a question looking at just who lives. So we're just looking for the total population. So we'll look at we'll be able to look at the different catchments here, and I'm just going to look at the aggregated catchments. So I'll go down with the total population. So within 10 minutes of our venue, we've got about 50,000 people living close to the theatre, and then within 30 minutes, we've got 112,000 people. So we can look at these by age, we can look at the breakdown, and then over an hour away, we can see we've got quite a large population accessible. You go over an hour to 120 minutes, you're getting close to Dublin and Cork, so you have a much 2.6 million people are close to the theatre. But we can change our catchments to look at the individual catchments to see what different population numbers we have. So within 10 minutes, of course, it's the same. But then between 10 and 30 minutes, we've got 61,000 people living. Between 30 and 45 minutes, we've 96,000. So that's telling us what numbers we have living in the various proximities to our venue. The next question was that there's an interest in families and those with under 12s in the household. So a way of looking at this, we don't have data on families, but obviously a way of looking at our families is to look at where the children are living, because they're obviously living with their families. So we can just look at our breakdown by age here. So if our population 0 to 14, this is the closest. The question was looking at under 12s, but not 14 is the closest we have here. So we can see that within 10 minutes of our venue, we've 10,000 under 14s living. We've 25,000 almost living within half an hour. So we might turn on the percentage to see how that matches with the state average. So within 10 minutes, so this is the Theatre Royal, so this is in Waterford City. So within the city, we've actually got a lower than the national average percentage of population age 0 to 14. But outside the city centre, we've got a slightly higher. So this is telling us a lot. We can tell if we're above or below average. We can switch to the count. We can see overall what kind of number we have. And now I might bring in the map so we can try and drill down and look in a bit more detail. So we're looking at Dublin here. I'm going to go down, drag down. I'm going to go down to Waterford. So we're looking at population 65 plus, but we're interested in population 0 to 14. So quickly on the graph, we've got the yellow areas have 0 to 10% of the population is aged 14 and under. And then the very dark areas, we've got almost 60% of the population. So just looking very briefly, I'm just going to turn off the overlay to look at Waterford. So we can see Waterford city centre is here. And this is the hinterland here. So you've got the suburbs around here. And I'll just turn on our map again. And this really correlates to what the Arts Council tool was telling us. We've got a lower than average young age population in the city centre. And then, as in many large towns and cities, in the suburbs, we've got a lot of new housing development. We've got a lot of new families living out away from the city centre in mid-sized to large family homes. So you can see for the Theatre Royal, if they're interested in identifying where their young age population are, they can identify with the mapping your audience tool initially what the numbers are like. And then you can drill down and you can see you've got estates here with 33% of the population are under 14. So you can zoom in. You can identify where exactly this is, what's near it, how can you access it, is there a community centre, how can you target your marketing there, are there schools, how can you work through them to develop relationships and access those crowds. So it's quite a good example of how you can use these tools to identify. Next, I'll just do this similar. I'll just jump back and look at the tool here. The second was to look at the over 55s. So that's looking at the older population. We can look at that by looking in the same category, the population category. We can look at the numbers we have here. So in around the city centre, we've about 6,000, and out within half an hour, we've got 14,000. And within 45 minutes, we've 25,000. So there's quite a number there. We can compare to the national average again and see how we are. Slightly higher than national average throughout. And then we can jump onto the mapping tool and see where we can identify where these populations are residing. So again, I'll just select my population by 65 plus. These are, once you spend 10 minutes using these tools, they're very easy to get familiar with how the filters work and how you can select them and how you can click on things. It's really spending 10 minutes to have a play and try the different features. You can annotate and you can print and you can bring in Google Street View. So it's very easy to familiarize yourself and to be able to access this type of information. So again, this is quite a different pattern. So you can see the urban hinterland here, where you've got a lot of the new families, and the young families has got very low levels of the older age population. And then in the city, in close to the city centre, and in the I suppose the more mature suburbs, you've got higher numbers here. So again, you can click on it. It'll tell you you've got about 35 or 38.5%, and that's 84 people are there. So again, you can go in, you can look, what's this estate like? You can turn off the map to see where is it exactly, Ferndale. I'll try to see if this feature is going to work. No, it won't, I'm afraid, but there's a Street View feature that actually won't work over the webinar, but you can drag the Street View man onto the road and you can have a look at the address, but it won't work through this software. So I'll move on and I'll have another look at a different question. The socio-economic situation of the area. So we've two different ways of looking at this. We can look at, we're still in the Theatre Royal, so we're going to select a different indicator. So first of all, I'm going to look at the principal economic status. So what's the labour force of this area? What's the level of unemployment? So we've got quite varying unemployment rate throughout the different catchments, ranging from over an hour away, we've got 18.2%. So this is a lot lower than in the city, where we've got the highest rate. Compared with the national average, it's quite a bit higher, where it's 17.8. So there's an issue there. We have a higher retired population than the national average as well. And we've probably got a lower labour force population at work. So this is telling us quite a bit. We can look at the numbers we have here as well. So we've got a labour force of about 25,000. Of that, just over 18.5 are working. So we've got the retired population. This is all in the city, and then out into the suburbs where you've got about 12,000. We can look at these in isolation. So excluding the city, we've got about 6,500 retired population between 10 and 30 minutes away from the venue. So that's the figures you have for the area surrounding the venue. You can also look at the socio-economic grouping classifications, which will give you a different breakdown of the social dimension. So for socio-economic group, it's often very useful to look at percentages, because figures and graphs will be skewed by looking at raw numbers. So we can compare across catchments what type of classifications we have: employers and managers, higher professionals. You can see across the catchment. Farther away, again, when you start to bring in the cities such as Cork and Wexford and Dublin, you get figures that are skewed. You have more higher professionals and like lower levels of skilled workers. So these are higher figures you have in the city centre. So again, you can build, by spending a bit of time and analysing these figures, you can build a bit of a picture of what's going on in your venue catchment. The final question that Oren had for the Theatre Royal, that she was interested in looking at the non-national population profile. So I can flick down onto nationality here, and I'll stick on percentage, because it's a good way of getting a very brief picture of what's going on. So as we'd expect, the percentage of Irish is going to be extremely high, as it is throughout most of the country, but it's the smaller figures that we look at, and they really do have quite an impact. They look very small in comparison to the Irish figures, but these smaller percentages really do represent quite a population. So looking in the immediate catchment between 0 to 10 minutes and 10 to 30 minutes, we've got between 84% and 90% population are Irish. So compare this to the national average, it's slightly lower in the immediate vicinity of the venue, and then it's quite a bit higher in the in the hinterland, or the wider area. Then we can look down through the categories. We've a slightly lower than average UK population, and that gets a bit higher again as we go out from the venue. And we've got quite a high other EU 27. So this is every other EU country bar Lithuania and Poland. And then we've got quite a high rest of the world population. So this is every other country outside Europe. So there's very low percentages, you might think, but we can turn on the figures and we can build up a picture of what kind of numbers we have here. So, for example, within half an hour, we've got nearly 3,000 UK nationals. We've almost 3,000 Polish nationals. We've over 2,000 other EU and 3,500 rest of the world population. So there's quite a few figures. Numbers are there in terms of populations and communities. There's certainly a relevant number of people in terms of targeting an audience, but these are quite relative to the city. These are quite small populations, so we might jump onto the map and help, which will allow us to target specifically where these populations are. Traditionally, non-national communities tend to cluster together. As we see in different parts of cities, you've areas where you have higher and lower percentages of non-national populations. So we can use the mapping tool to try and identify that. So, for example, if we're interested in look at the Polish communities in Waterford, we can see our venue in the city centre. You can see there's some very distinctive pockets where you've got non-national communities. So we can click on this, and we can see that 22% of the population living in the area highlighted in blue, so I can zoom into it. So in the area highlighted in blue here, 22% of the population is our Polish national, which the number is 29. So you can see that there is, in comparison to other areas of Waterford, you've got a higher non-national population. So in terms of targeting this audience, you can take a very focused approach by using these tools. You can identify what estates, what schools are there, what community centres are there, what other social resources are there that can help you connect with these communities. So I'm going to move on from the Theatre Royal now, and I'm going to look at another few more questions. Now, so I have a question here about when will there be an information update in the tool with the next census? And there's a question about internet access as well, and in urban centres since 2011. And really, in comparison, I'm talking about comparing 2006 and 2011 census. The level of internet access has improved, but it's more the level of access to broadband. The census, they ask you whether you have internet access, and then they ask you, do you have access to broadband? And there's been a significant shift in the level of access to broadband. Internet's improved generally, but although figures have increased, they probably haven't increased to the level you'd expect. In terms of the next census, we've got the next census will be available by 2016. So it normally takes about 9 months before we get the initial figures the initial figures are released, and then we need the very detailed small area data to run the type of analysis we've run to develop this tool. So that generally takes a year to 13 months. So it'd probably realistically be 2017 before we get to do an update with the tool. But hopefully we'll look to update features of the tool, maybe bring in more data, maybe enrich it, and so on.
This one about the subscription. I think that I just say it's free. It's free.
Yeah, I'm just have a question here about to confirm whether there's a subscription for an institution, and there is none. All of this is completely free, and it's completely open access. It's the URLs, or you can visit the Arts Council website to visit the mapping your audience tool, and then to access the mapping, you can visit aero.ie. So yeah, everything's completely open and accessible. So I'll just move on and have a look at really another important feature that's with this tool, that you can extract the raw data. I mentioned this as I went over the tool, and it's really, it gives the user a massive amount of flexibility. So I'm going to pick a few Dublin venues here, and I'm interested in looking at the number of retired population in an area. So, for example, I'm going to pick the axis Ballymun. I'm going to purposely pick areas in contrasting socioeconomic areas in Dublin, and I'm going to pick the principal economic status. So here are my figures here, and I want to compare, so I'm going to use the percentage figures. So I can see my figures are here. I've got my number retired, my labour force at work. So I want to download the data from this from my selection. This is what I want to view, but I can't really do enough with it on the screen. I need to bring it into Excel to do a bit of my own analysis. So I can download an image of what I've selected here as a PDF or as a JPEG, or I can download a crosstab, which is a snapshot of the data I've selected. Otherwise, I can download the underlying data, but this is my selection. This is what I want to look at. So I'm going to download that, and that's going to open up in Excel for me. So that's just to one side for a minute. I'm going to select my next venue. So I want a bit of a contrasting area, so I'm going to select the Pavilion in Dún Laoghaire. And I'm going to keep my same selection. I've got the same data indicator, so I want to download that data as well. And I'm going to download the crosstab. So I've downloaded that. And then I want to select the national figures as well. So I'm just going to click in around the graph so it knows what data to download. And I'm going to download that as well. So off screen, I've got 3 different spreadsheets. I'm just going to take a moment now just to bring these in, and I'll bring it up on screen now in 1 second. It's one of the harder things to do on a webinar, but I think that it'll be worth showing you the outcome now. I'm just taking a moment to take the data. The data's arrived in 3 Excel files, so I just want to bring them together for you so you know what I'm looking at. If you just bear with me for 1 moment. So we've this is basically what I downloaded from the web tool. We were looking at labour force retired, and I just selected the area of 0 to 10 minutes. So it gave me 3 spreadsheets, one for Ballymun, one for the Pavilion, and one for state. So I'm just going to change that to state. So we know what we're looking at. So if we jump back onto the web tool, we'll see that these are the same figures that I'd selected. This is just the raw data in a raw format. So I can do it in I have it in Excel now. I can do what I want with these figures. I can make a graph very easily. So you can I can put this into my funding application, into my report, to try and make a point, to try and tell a story of where my venue stands out or why it has a certain need in comparison to other venues. So if you think of all the different demographics that are in the web tool and all the different data that's in there, you can really build a case or a story for your venue by using this tool, by looking at other venues, by looking at different trends and different figures. You can really put your venue in a position to assist whatever developments you're trying to achieve. So let's jump back now to the web tool. So I really think this is a really important feature of the web tool, that you familiarize yourself with the download features, and it really enriches what you can do with that. So let's see if we have another question here. And I am going to look at, I'm going to show a different type of mapping and analysis tool here. We have a question from Gillian Fenton from the Lime Tree in Limerick. So I'm going to answer her questions. She has a question about parents and families for a children's program. So they want to look at, they're interested in looking outside the city centre and accessing a wider 30-minute catchment. And they're also interested in looking at the active retirement groups and how to connect with these groups. So first of all, let's jump onto the web tool here and find the Lime Tree to see what demographic figures we have here. So we're going to go back and look at total population. I should also point out, if you're interested in, it's probably not so common these days, but if there's a gender specific need, you can look at males and females, you can look at the different distributions. As we look at them, they tend to be pretty 50-50 throughout the country. There rarely tend to be any big differences. But I'm just on looking at population total now. So again, I've got my different age categories. So I'll start to look at these questions for the Lime Tree in Limerick. So we're interested in looking at the numbers and to look at attenders outside the reaches of the city. So I'm just going to look at the catchments individually here to see first of all, what kind of numbers are accessible here. So we're covered, Gillian wasn't too interested in what's going on in the immediate 0 to 10 or the 10 to 30 minute catchment. So a little bit outside that wider area, there's about 24,800 people accessible. So there's quite a significant number. She's also interested in the over 55. So again, we're limited to the over 65s here, but we can build up a picture of that population number there. So you've got about 15,000. We look at the percentage and see that again, this is pretty well in line with the national average in terms of population 0 to 14, and then population 65 plus is quite a higher percentage population here. So it's a good bit higher in the area of interest here for the Lime Tree. So I am going to look at a different mapping tool now, just to give you a different way of assessing it. So I'm going to look at a Limerick specific tool. So we developed not only a national viewer like the viewer I was looking at, but a few of specific interests. If you want to keep within your local county boundary, you can use these tools. So it's very similar to the other map I showed you. There's a bit more background data in it, but as you can see, the only map I've got available here is for Limerick. So I'm going to go in and look at Limerick City. So at the minute, I'm looking at total population. So here, it's a little bit different to the other one, but I just have drop downs here where I can look at my population. I should also point out with these census, this type of tool, I can look at a lot more detail. So I can look at population under 5s. I can look at population 5 to 9. I can look at much more detailed age bands. So there's probably a bit more detail in terms of accessibility for what I can see here. So anyway, for this question, then I want to look at the younger age population. So maybe for this example, I'm going to I'll stick with under 14s because it's a quicker way of looking at it. So similar to the Waterford example, you can see that the urban core tends to have lower percentage populations, and then out in the fringes where you've got newer developments, you've got higher concentration. So at the minute, I'm looking at the number, so you can hover over and it'll tell you the number of children under 14 that are residing here. I can go in, I can look and change. I'm going to just look at the percentage of the number here, and you have the percentage as well. So it's the same as with the Arts Council tool. You can look at the count and the percentage because they will tell you a very different thing. And when it comes to comparison, it's very useful to look at the rates. So this is, again, I've switched and I'm looking at to look at the other side of the question for active retirement groups. I'm looking at the older age population. So you can see there's some specific hotspots relatively proximate to the city centre. And you can see these are the populations here where you have really the highest numbers. So you've got 36% of the population, 64% of the population. And out beyond the city, it's very clear that these are the newer areas. So if you want to target the active retirement groups, these are the areas that you don't want, these light coloured areas. I can go down, I can look at socio-economic group, because the question did focus on active retirement. So I'll scroll down. There's a multitude of different data categories in here. Again, all I can say is to go on and have a browse and try and find what's relevant for you. So I've just mapped the retired populations. So this is a very clear and distinctive way of selecting where are your retired populations that you want to target for your specific venue needs. So I think that answers that question now. Okay, so how can a venue be added to the Select Arts Venue drop-down? And that's from the Design and Crafts Council of Ireland. So at the minute, we carried out all of our analysis based on the 74 funded venues. So the way the system's been built, it's actually it's very hard to add a new venue without rebuilding it and republishing it. So all I can really recommend is to select the venue that's nearest to them. So if your venue, in terms of the size, if you think of the catchments that I showed in the earlier presentation, if you look at the size of these catchments, if you select a venue that's relatively proximate, it's very straightforward. The numbers, they're going to be slightly different to your venue, but it's the baseline figures are going to be very close to what your venue is. So I'll just see if we have any more questions. And I'm just going to look at one more. We had a question on internet access there, so I'm going to have a look at that. So I'm just going to pick an area that's got quite a rural and urban contrast, I suppose. So I'm going to look to the Midlands, and I'm going to pick the Backstage Theatre in Longford. So from my drop down, I'm going to select internet access, and I'm going to look at the percentages first, just to give me a broad idea of what's going on in the area. So as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, the census asks whether you've got broadband or whether you've got other types of internet access. So we're kind of interested in the immediate area around the Backstage in Longford. So relatively high figures don't have access to internet in Longford. So you've got 32.5% in around Longford town. Just outside the town, you've got 35%, and then it drops down 30 to 45 minutes. The reason this probably goes down because within 30 to 45 minutes of Longford town, you're hitting other major towns that would have maybe better internet access. So briefly compare that with the national. The figures are significantly higher in around Longford. So in terms of choosing how you're going to do your marketing campaign, it's this is suggesting that maybe doing it over online or online marketing might not be the best solution. So again, I'm just going to jump onto a different mapping tool to have a look. So I'm quite interested in really only Longford here. So I'm going to jump onto my map and going to have a look at Longford. So here is Longford, and I'm going to just go into my data selection and select my theme. So from practice, I know that internet is down around theme number 15. So households with internet access. So I'm going to look at the percentage that don't have access, because this might give me, it gives me quite an interesting picture here. So we can see the dark areas, we've got between 50 and 60% of the households don't have internet access. So I'm going to go into Longford town, and there's quite a contrast. You can see the heavily built up parts of Longford, they've got some areas, a lot of these areas have very low internet access, which I'd have to say is quite surprising. Around the hinterland, there is higher levels of access, lower numbers of households, and then out into the more rural hinterland, again, you've got quite low levels of internet access. So you can see our catchment, it moves into Edgeworthstown as well. So you've got low percentages of households with no internet. So that's suggesting there's decent internet access in Edgeworthstown. But in Longford Town, you can see there's an issue with regard to internet access there. So again, you'd generally assume, given that everyone has a smartphone and everyone has laptops and tablets nowadays, but it's actually not the picture. It's not the picture across Ireland, especially in some rural areas. So again, it's very easy and quick to go and use the tool to access it, just to give a bit of an evidence base, a bit of a robust backing to what you're trying to put into an application. So I just have another question here, and it's asking me to confirm where the mapping tool site is, and that's from Miriam in the Instituto Cervantes in Dublin. So I'll just go and I'll show you where the mapping tools are held again. I'll open up. Sorry, I'll go back to the Aero site. So it's if you can log on to just www.aero.ie, that's going to bring you to this is going to bring you to the Aero website. So this is our it's completely free and publicly accessible site. There's no logins. You have your mapping resources, and there's a number of different types of data and data visualization resources there. We work a lot in socio-demographics, but for the relevant data and mapping, we want to look at the census mapping here. So we go into our mapping resources and then into our Aero census maps. So then you might remember the first example, I was looking at Waterford. I was looking at the entire country, so we can look at maps at national level and look at our census mapping viewer there. But if you have an interest in looking at only, you want to stay within your local authority, you go into your local authority maps and you can select what local authority you want to look at, and it's all available there. So if people have any difficulties, we can contact the Arts Council or Aero directly, and we'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction for what kind of you're trying to achieve. Oh yes, of course. And I'll just, while I'm pointing out where the tools are available, this tool is available on the Arts Council website. So I'll just go to the home page of the Arts Council. Sorry, it's having an internet slowdown. And if we have the banner across the top here, so if I just go through a few of the different options here, we've mapping your audience, and I'll click in here, and you can see the tool just loads up down below. And it's on the strategic development section of the website. So also, if you didn't catch everything today, there's an instructional video you can watch which runs through all the key features of this tool. So it really is, it's a very useful tool for building up baseline figures for your venue. And we can't really recommend it enough. We've had a lot of good feedback from people who are using it. So we're really trying to encourage more and more people to use it. So I think I'm going to wrap up now. I think we've covered a lot of the questions that we've had today. I'd like to thank everyone for submitting their questions. If people have more questions, they can contact me at Aero, or they can contact Monica at the Arts Council. I'm just going to pass over to Monica, and she's just going to give a few closing remarks. So thank you very much for signing in today, and I hope you found it useful and learned a few techniques in terms of analysis and accessing relevant data. So thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Owen. Monica Corcoran here from the Strategic Development Department of the Arts Council. I'd just like to thank you all for tuning in today. We are really delighted to see that we've had 76 viewers, participants in this webinar today. And the Strategic Development Department of the Arts Council, we're delighted to work with arts audiences in sort of extending learning about this tool and how you can get the most out of it. We really want to continue the conversation with you, on this tool, and we'd be really interested in getting your continuing feedback on the tool and how you're using it, how you're finding it. And I would also really urge you to complete the feedback for arts audiences, and hopefully it can help us to shape some future training sessions for you. So that's all. Thanks very much. Bye.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just getting a little notice here from Una.
The whole webinar is on YouTube.
Oh yeah, just to remind you as well, that the whole webinar is available in case you feel you've missed anything. It's all available on YouTube and you can connect into it there. Okay, any queries? I'd very much like to thank Owen from Aero at NUI Maynooth and all the team at Aero for, not just developing the tool, but also for being so great and sharing all this information. And thanks again to Arts Audiences for organising this event. Okay, bye-bye.